Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, y'all, and Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast. I apologize that we haven't dropped an episode in a long time. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I just don't feel like talking about myself right now. But over the weekend, I will say that Harlem lost and America lost and the Muslim world lost a very special and profound and very meaningful voice of a brother, a father, the Imam of Harlem, Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid, passed away. There's going to be some tears in this episode because Imam Talib meant a lot to me. He meant to a lot of people, but he means a lot to me, and he will always mean a lot to me. I just hit record, and I'm just going to start talking. How do we even begin? So just in case, if you're not familiar with him, I have a song called Good Lord. Good Lord was commissioned by Mo Amer and Preacher Moss and Azhar Usman. If Mo Amer is having a great run. He just released a new Netflix special. He's made the rounds. He was just on Drink Champs, and he's been on all sorts of platforms and things. I've known Mo for a long time, and I love him dearly, as I do Preacher Moss and Azhar Usman. The three of them had a comedy tour called Allah Made Me Funny. They reached out to me to do a song for the film. Made the song called Good Lord, which talked about being an artist and being a Muslim. In the hip-hop space, people that don't come from original hip-hop culture find it strange. They're like, we don't want to hear about your religion when you're rapping. We just want to hear rap music. And then also there are Muslims that are saying they have this idea that music is haram. There's this very oversimplified, very flat kind of slogan that music is haram. And I intend to do an episode of this podcast about that subject, inshallah. But so on both sides, something that felt very natural to me. Hip-hop is what made me interested in Islam. And Islam is what kept me rhyming when I honestly felt like quitting. We filmed the video for it at the Audubon Ballroom at a very, very, very special gathering that was put together by Iman, the Inner City Muslim Action Network that operates. Their home is in Chicago. They also have a location in Atlanta. They've got a base in Atlanta. They do amazing work, but they've also done work in other cities as well. And on this particular occasion, they put together a cultural, artistic evening of Muslim artists and activists and speakers and educators and spiritual leaders in Harlem at the place where Malcolm X was assassinated, which was originally called the Audubon Ballroom. Now it's called the Malcolm and Dr. Betty Shabazz Cultural Center. And so we went there and we performed, me and BK1, and Pop Master Fable was there. Tila Rock was there that made It's Yours. Ali Shahid Muhammad. If I start naming people, I'll miss people, but Dr. Umar Farouk Abdullah was there. Mo Amer and Azhar Usman were there. So many. Dr. Suad Abdul Khabir was there. Rami Neshashibi was there. Dr. Rasul Miller was there. So many people, Like I said, there's no way to name people without missing a lot. But our folks were there. And it was very, very special, and I flew my family out. But Imam Talib was there, and he spoke. And in the video for Good Lord, if you go and watch it, he's speaking at the beginning. And you hear him, talking about what it means to be an artist as a Muslim. He was the Imam of what we call MIB, the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood. For 30 years, he was their Imam. And even as an elder, he was just so cool and so fly and so, down to earth. And he also was a prison chaplain. He's somebody that was a lover of, healthy food. He was an advocate of plant-based diets and things like that really early on. He wouldn't want me to speak about him without really focusing on his teacher. Imam Talib's teacher was a man who went by the name Sheikh Tofi. Allah have mercy on him. Sheikh Tofi was from South Carolina originally. Imam Talib was from North Carolina. They both were born in the Carolinas and then made that track, the black migration to the north as youngsters, and they both settled in Harlem. Sheikh Alama Tawfiq was an early convert to Islam, and when Malcolm X broke away from the Nation of Islam and embraced global, traditional, historical Islam, what some call Orthodox Islam or Sunni Islam, Sheikh Tawfiq was one of the people that joined his Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Malcolm started a religious organization and a political organization. Political organization was Organization for African American Unity, the OAAU, and the religious organization was Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Sheikh Tawfiq was somebody that joined Muslim Mosque Incorporated. When Malcolm went to travel and visit the Muslim world as a newly independent member of the Sunni community, he went around the world and he met the Sheikh of Al-Azhar University. It's one of the oldest and one of the most prestigious universities in the world that's still operating. The Sheikh of Al-Azhar gave Malcolm a number of scholarships. He said, "We would love for your community to come, and we would be honored for you to send representatives here." And Sheikh Tawfiq was one of the ones that went. And he studied at Al-Azhar. He loved languages, Swahili and Arabic and French and German and all of these languages. He was a linguist. He learned to memorize the Quran and to recite the Quran. When he came back to America, Sheikh Alama Tawfiq was the first person born in America to record a recitation of the Quran. And this was something that Imam Talib, who we just lost, was extremely proud. He loved his teacher, Sheikh Tawfiq. He talked about him all the time. We're mutual friends with Dr. Cornell West, and Dr. Cornell West always says, "I am who I am because somebody loved me." And to know Imam Talib, this man who was born in 1951 in North Carolina and came to New York, he experienced extreme racism in his life. His teacher, Sheikh Tawfiq, had been born in 1930s, 36, I want to say, in South Carolina. I mean, when these men were born, they couldn't vote. They didn't have any rights that a white person was bound to respect. They couldn't go to school with white people. They couldn't eat in a restaurant. They couldn't. I mean, this is pre-civil rights era. We're talking about 1936 for Sheikh Tawfiq, 1951 for Imam Talib. So, I mean, these men were less than 100 years outside of slavery they were born. Sheikh Tawfiq was the first American-born person to record a recitation of the Quran. He did Surah Yasin, which is considered the heart of the Quran. Yasin Bey is named after Surah Yasin, okay? He also recorded Surah Al-Yusuf, which is the story of the Prophet Joseph in the Quran. What the Prophet Joseph went through is a master class for anyone who's been oppressed. Please, if you get a chance, go and read Surah Yusuf, the Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him. Read his story in the Quran. You can read it in English. You can listen on audiobook. It's an amazing story. It's the only chapter in the Quran where the chapter is a story, and it's a linear story. Other stories in the Quran, you get some of it here, some of it there. All people who know oppression, especially African American people, have a deep, deep love for this chapter. And Sheikh Tawfiq was the first American to record it. So I believe it was on vinyl, but by the time I met the student, our teacher, Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid, it was a CD. And he would give this CD to anybody that came through. He was so proud of it. Sheikh Alama Tawfiq, now again, this is the teacher. When Malcolm was assassinated, Sheikh Tawfiq was the one who was appointed by Dr. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's widow, to teach Islamic education to the girls. So he taught Ilyasa Shabazz and he taught the daughters of Malcolm. He came to their house and personally tutored them. And he started something called the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood. I believe it actually started originally in Brooklyn, but then they moved it to Harlem. And he gave 30 years of his life to this kind of community building. And then his main student was Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid. And Imam Talib served as the imam at MIB, which is on, I want to say 116th. The people in Harlem are going to be like, what are you talking about, Ak? It's either 116th, 114th, right in that area. And St. Nicholas is right in that area. And my mosque, when I go to New York, is MIB, Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood. And I'm going to tell some great stories, too. I got some great stories with Imam Talib that I'll tell you in a second. But in the early 80s, when hip-hop was strong, when Zulu Nation was powerful, Zulu Nation, as started by Africa Bambaataa and led by Africa Bambaataa, it took a lot of inspiration from the Nation of Islam, from Sunni Islam, Orthodox Islam, and also from the 5% Nation of Islam, which are three very unique movements. And within Sunni Islam, there's a number of different movements as well. And also, we can't mention any of these movements without mentioning the Moorish Science Temple of America as well. These were all big inspirations in the foundation and the formation of hip-hop as a culture and as a movement by Africa Bambaataa. Africa Bambaataa is the one who says these kids writing graffiti on the trains and the DJs that are playing breaks in the park and the people that are dancing to it and the people that are getting on the mic doing rhymes and poetry over the top of it. All of this is part of one cultural movement. These are four elements of one culture, and he called that culture hip-hop. And he said those are the four artistic elements, and the fifth element is knowledge, and knowledge of self particularly. And that knowledge of self was, like I said, inspired also Pan-Africanist movements, people like John Henrik Clarke and Dr. Ben. Harlem has a very, very deep and really nuanced intellectual, spiritual, religious history, movement history. It's really nuanced, and all of it is in the inspiration for hip-hop music and culture. Africa Bambaataa was able to bring all of this stuff together in a way that was very, very transformative for people. And he had been a person in street organizations before that. And he was somebody that was able to convince, at least a lot of the time, street organizations that they call gangs to settle their disputes using art, using dance, using MCs battling each other. I mean, this is very, very real history. Africa Bambaataa also, there were allegations about him, with sexual abuse of boys. And when I heard those men talking about what they say happened to them, I believe them, and unfortunately that's something that just hasn't really been dealt with in the hip hop community and in the hip hop space. And it was a huge blow. The Zulu Nation was having a resurgence. OG Mark Love from the West Coast had just inducted me into the Zulu Nation. On camera, he took off a big Africa medallion that Ninth Wonder had gifted him, and he put it on my neck, and he said, I want you to be an important person in the Zulu Nation. And then these allegations really became well known. I say all that to say that a lot of the members of the Zulu Nation, particularly B-boys and Rocksteady, were interested in Islam. There's a documentary called Dean Tight. You can see Popmaster Fable, our dear brother, talking about hip-hop and Islam and how huge an impact the two had on each other, how in a lot of ways they went hand in hand. And so Popmaster Fable told us of a time when there was so much interest from hip-hoppers and B-boys and B-girls at that time that Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid, who we just lost, or who just, transitioned and returned to his Lord, what we're told to say in the Quran is, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi means from Allah, meaning we come from God and we belong to God. Wa inna ilayhi, and certainly to him, to God, raji'un, we return. So we say, from Allah we come, to Allah we return. Imam Talib had a special class just for the hip-hop community, just for the hip-hop kids. And in that class was Crazy Legs and Popmaster Fable and a number of other people from the Zulu Nation, from Rocksteady crew. He had a special class for them. And Imam Talib used to say to me, he had a really distinctive voice. I'm going to do his voice, and I hope everybody knows it's out of complete and sheer and utter love. So, I'm partially blind, I'm albino, so I can hear people's voices is the number one way I relate to people. And most of the people that really inspire me and really have an impact on my heart, they have very unique voices. And I do their voices out of love for them. But he used to tell me all the time, Brother Ali, what you have to understand is that hip hop is not entertainment. Hip hop is war. He was very clear about the fact that slavery is an act of war. Slavery is an act of war. In the traditional world, people were enslaved if they lost a war. If two nations or two, societies went to war over who was going to control a certain place, and one of them were victorious, the other ones could flee or they would be taken as captives. And so he says slavery is an act of war. And what MCs do, what B-boys and B-girls do, what DJs do, what graffiti artists do, it's a warrior act of resistance. One of the things that is said about the Meccans at the time that the Prophet Muhammad came is they said, in order to understand these people, you have to understand that this is a society of warrior poets. And it's very, very similar in this tradition. This beautiful, rich legacy of griots in the West African tradition, people that tell the stories and sing the songs and give the poems that help the people remember who we are, who our teachers are, who our elders are, who our ancestors are, who our sheikhs are, who our mothers are, who our warriors are, who our leaders are, who we are is preserved, with drumming and also with people doing this like singing sort of style of rhythmic poetry that absolutely shows up again in all forms of American music, which are all black music. All forms of American music originate as black music. And then they're heard and appropriated and, interpolated and oftentimes just straight up stolen. And then they just become American music. It's essential to acknowledge when you have the black community, and I will say this is also true for the Muslim community that's not black. You have so many foundational contributions, including the reality of it itself. The Muslim community in America is so hesitant and negligent in acknowledging to whom did Allah give his religion in America. No one else has had a communal conversion over multiple generations to Islam. Black people in America are the ones that accepted Islam in groups. And like Dr. Sherman Jackson points out, it's a miracle. Dr. Sherman Jackson was born and raised in Philadelphia. He said, when I was young, I never heard the Quran. I didn't really hardly know any Muslims. Now in Philadelphia, you can walk down the street and there's all these kids that have memorized the entire Quran. There's mosques everywhere. There's women wearing hijab. There's men wearing beards and long garments and halal food, and Islam is everywhere. He said, as a community, we pray for miracles like this. And then when they happen, we don't acknowledge them. Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, who just celebrating 50 years of his community legacy, his birthday just passed. He led a transition of hundreds of thousands of American-born people from the Nation of Islam's understanding and practice of Islam, which I said is very unique. It's not something that's found in the sources of Islam before 1930. He led that group to a traditional, culturally black, but traditional understanding and practice of Islam in the course of a year. Some say 500,000. I think about the night that Donald Trump was elected the first time, and so many Americans were feeling deeply saddened by that. On Saturday Night Live, they asked Dave Chappelle to host, and they asked Tribe Called Quest to be the musical guest. And, Phife had just passed away. And I'm looking and like, these are the people that America is depending on to comfort them in this time. And they're the children of genius people If you go to West Africa and you know them, you start to see who the Mandinka are, who these people are, their languages. We have these lies that are told about them. And sometimes they're just lies of ignoring them, leaving them out of the, but I mean, these cultures and these people, their languages, their traditions, they're incredibly profound. These people are stolen and sold and kidnapped into the worst conditions that human beings in recorded history have known for centuries. Centuries. We're not talking about a couple generations. We're talking about centuries of rape and castration, babies taken from their mothers. Children were starting to be sexually abused on plantations starting at the age of 5 and 6 years old. We're talking about generation after generation after generation. And then finally, this Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation is signed. The Civil War is won because black people joined the Northern Army and fought. They basically freed themselves. Then you've got Reconstruction, you've got Jim Crow, you've got lynching, you've got black towns, cities that were built all over America, all over the South. Thriving businesses, institutions of education, churches, business districts that were burned to the ground and bombed. Tulsa, Oklahoma is just one of them. But entire black cities that were burned to the ground because they were a formidable competitive threat to the white mainstream business world. They were burned to the ground. They were bombed, literally bombed. Thousands of people, black people, lynched in public, castrated. People brought their children and they had big cookouts. Some people say that the word picnic comes from pick up to lynch. Whether that particular etymology is true or not, the reality is that they did have big picnics. They took pictures of this stuff. People would cut body parts off of these human beings and bring them home and save them and keep them. The first major motion picture in America is Birth of a Nation, which is complete propaganda to justify. Black people can't even vote until the mid-1960s. I'm saying and these people, generation after generation after generation, are giving hope and comfort and direction and spiritual grounding to everyone. Nobody can dance without them. Nobody can sing without them. And in a world where we have less and less access to religion, spirituality, to traditions of any kind that are meaningful, singing and dancing is really all America has left. And who's teaching us how to sing? Who's teaching us how to dance? All of the speech styles and the things that give life meaning and flavor and flair, all the stuff that other people in the world are attracted to, it's all them. So it's important to acknowledge these things because, everybody wants to take and borrow black stuff. But then when we start talking about black people having just the right to be treated properly, just to be acknowledged as human and to have the same human access as everybody else, well, then suddenly we treat them like they're just a charity case. But it's like, I'm sorry, these are the first human beings that literally built America. America as a superpower emerges because of the free labor that America enjoyed for centuries, okay? I'm not talking about a 30-year period. That's how America becomes America. It's in the Constitution that black people are 3/5 of a human being. The Dred Scott decision in the Supreme Court says that black people don't have any rights that a white person has to acknowledge. Brown versus Board of Education, over and over and over and over and over again. The Civil War of America, I'm saying this is deeply baked into what America is. And it's crazy to me to see that in the hip hop world, we got entire swaths of white artists and white listeners that don't acknowledge the truth of who black people are in their own culture. And then we got in the Muslim community, outside of the black community, it's everything from overt racism to microaggressions to the just constant deafening hum of completely ignoring black people and black realities and black people's communal relationship to God. There's a passage in the Quran that says that if you don't honor this religion, I will take it away from you and I will give it to somebody else. Allah says, I will love them and they will love me, and they will be firm with their opponents, and they'll be sweet with the believers, and they won't fear the criticism of criticizers. It's like, and then we don't realize, the Muslim world doesn't realize that Allah gave Black Americans his religion without the historical Muslim community really having anything to do with it. This is why we have to love the Nation of Islam. Because it's like, that's the way that Allah, and the Moorish Science Temple and other movements, this is how Allah gave his religion to Black people in America, on American soil, in the belly of the beast. And also, I mean, not to mention the fact that, we're all looking and we're all talking about Palestine, and we should be talking about Palestine. We're also, as a community, have been ignoring what's going on in Sudan. The people that were stolen from Africa, kidnapped, stolen, and sold from the African continent and brought to the quote unquote new world in the chattel slavery system, a huge, enormous percentage of them were Muslim. This is like a Palestine. This is like another Palestine situation, and no formidable group from the Muslim world did a damn thing about it. Except for the Muslims in West Africa did. And that's a big misnomer that somehow the Muslims were just passive when it came to slavery. It's like, I'm sorry, you can't pull that small time stuff over on us. We know about Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. Allah be well pleased with him. We know about all of these movements for West African Muslims. We know that it was West African, the descendants of West African Muslims that led the slave revolts in Haiti. But the Muslim world didn't have any serious response. Black West African Muslims, some of them are from Ahlul Bayt. They're descendants of the Prophet Muhammad himself. They're descendants of great Sahaba, great companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm sorry for airing dirty laundry, but these things are true. And we're talking about our teacher, Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid, and I believe that this is what he would be happy for me to talk about. So Imam Talib, this one's for you, sir. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the love that I have for this man. But we've got these great imams, these great leaders, and they're not going to be with us forever. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that Allah removes knowledge by the death of scholars and the death of our leaders. And when someone like Imam Talib passes away, I mean, there's nobody to replace him. But, it just made me think about Imam Zayd Shakir. It made me think about Imam Fahim Shu'aib and Imam Pliman El-Amin, and it made me Imam Siraj Wahaj in Brooklyn. What can we still learn from them while they're here? How can we still honor them while they're here? Muslims from the global Muslim diaspora only were able to come to America on the heels of the Black Civil Rights Movement. It was the Black Civil Rights Movement in the mid-'60s that opened the door for non-white immigrants to America. So the Arabs and the Pakistanis and, others, the Bengalis and the others that were able to come to America came only on the heels of the Black Civil Rights Movement. And I asked Imam Zayd, these people have given their lives to this thing. And it's like, we want to make you proud. What would that look like? And he said, no one's ever asked me that question. I want to tell a couple stories with Imam Talib. And a couple of them are funny, and then one of them is really deeply moving. Imam Talib, I mentioned his voice, but it was an important big deal to him that we respect Jummah, the Friday prayer, congregational prayer. And it is from the tradition of Islam that we wear our best clothes on Friday. And he really insisted that that's not streetwear. This was his personal take on that. But you should wear traditional Islamic clothing or like a suit, something like that. If you're going to wear Western clothes, then wear something that very clearly communicates to everyone that I'm honoring this occasion and I'm honoring the people that I'm going to be with. You know, Westerners dress for themselves. Traditional people dress for the occasion because the way that I'm dressed contributes to the overall vibe. So Imam Talib wanted you to wear, if you're going to wear Western clothes, he wanted you to wear a suit or something like that, or you could wear traditional Islamic clothes. So one day I'm in Harlem, I'm in New York, and whenever I'm in New York, I'm at MIB, Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood. I was performing with Immortal Technique this particular night. I'm going to go to MIB for Jummah, and then after that, I'm going to go to the show. So I go into Jummah, and I'm probably wearing a tracksuit because that's what I wear on stage. But it's presentable. Like I'm gonna be on stage in front of 500 people in a couple hours. Like I'm presentable. I'm dressed well, but I'm wearing sportswear. And Imam Talib is up there giving Jummah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma shalli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. He's up there doing his thing. He says, you know, I always remind the brothers to wear the proper attire when you come to Jummah. This is the greatest day of the week. This is the Eid that happens every Friday. You brothers come up in here dressed like you fixing to attend a sporting event. But by the looks of your body, we know you don't play sports. Oh my God. Oh, dude. I said, man, this guy is bagging on me from the pulpit, you know what I'm saying, from the minbar. And I said, and I think I might even said, oh, like I might have said something even, you know what I mean? And he looked over at me. So then after Juma, you would sign a list. So he would go to his office and he would basically do office hours. And you signed a list, and then when it was your turn, they would come get you, you know, anybody that had something they needed to speak to the imam about. So a brother came and got me. Yo, Brother Ali, said, Imam said, he ready for you. So I go in there, and he always just called me Habibi, which means my beloved. He never called me Brother Ali, nothing. He always just say, Habibi. He wouldn't even say Salamu Alaikum. He'd just say, Habibi, always. So he's standing in the door of his office, and he goes, Habibi, and he's got his arms out to give me a big hug. And I gave him a big hug. I said, hey, man, why are you bombing on me in the Jummah, man? Like, you know what I mean? And he said, that's how you know you part of the family. You not a visitor. You are part of the community, and we got to tell it like a TI is. I said, yes, sir, brother Imam. And he would just say all the time, you know, this was somebody that we would just hang out, you know, and that's the most traditional way of learning from our teachers is what they call suhba, which means just companionship, kicking it. The people that were with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're not called his students, they're not called his disciples, they're called his companions, because that's the way that he taught, was by living life together. And a lot of that time you're just kicking it. And so we got to hang out with Imam Talib for hours and hours and days, you know, and the whole time you're talking about important stuff. But I mean, he was an activist, he was an educator, he was an imam, he was a community leader, he was a husband, he was a, you know, all of these things, a father, and man, he could give you great advice on any subject. This is like real, like you're with an elder who loves you. And he also was super fly. And he also knew all the slang. You know what I'm saying? He always knew all the slang. You know, he's like, you want to kick it? That's what he always say. You want to kick it? I was like, yeah, let's kick it. I said, I got to go to the show later. But yeah, let's kick it. So we went downstairs, and he was really into health food. There was right below MIB, Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood. I don't know if it's still there or not, but there was a health food restaurant. And so he's like, let's go downstairs. We'll get you some good food. None of this stuff, none of this mess you be eating. And he would like talk to me like that, you know, but it's like a loving father type of vibe. None of this mess you be eating. Got you looking like you need to eat to live, Habibi. So we go downstairs, we're eating, and I'm texting with Immortal Technique because we got our show. And so he ends up coming by the restaurant. So Imam Talib and I stand up, Technique walks in. And so I introduced Imam Talib. I said, this is Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid. He's been the leader of the mosque upstairs for 30 years. His teacher was from the organization that Malcolm X started, and some of the stuff I just told you. So then I turned to introduce Technique. And of course, Imam Talib, man, he's a man of the people. He's a Harlemite. He's the real thing. And he says, Habibi, Immortal Technique needs no introduction. Like, almost like, man, this is a king here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Alhamdulillah. Very, very beautiful. I got a lot of great stories with Imam Talib, but another one that I never will forget was that my wife's from New York. We lived in Minnesota for a long time. And we had this kind of routine that we would do sometimes where we go to New York basically for a week. Now, this particular trip was amazing across the board because one of Immortal Technique's crew, a brother named Jay Arch, had passed away. Allah have mercy on him. He's a beautiful, beautiful brother. And they were doing memorial and benefit show for his family at SOB's, famous hip hop spot. That's where me and my wife actually met back in 2003, excuse me. And that show was actually, Sean Price came through the show, and that was my last time seeing Sean Price. You know, after me and Sean Price had been on tour together and everything else. We had this way, my wife loved to drive. And so what we would do to go to New York is on a Thursday night, we would leave and drive 6 or 8 hours to Chicago. We'd get a hotel in Chicago with the kids, get up on Friday and go to Juma. And then we'd see the community. And then from there, it's 12 hours to New York. And she would just bang it out. I called Imam Talib and I said, I'm coming to New York. He was like, all right, Habibi, let me know. Come kick it. We'll kick it. I was like, yes, sir. So we get in the car, and at this particular time, this is 2015, and this is when Black Lives Matter was a grassroots thing. Patrisse Cullors hadn't started the organization called Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter was a slogan for Black organizers on a grassroots level. So a lot of people talk about Black Lives Matter. If they heard about it from the news, they're thinking about the organization in LA. We that were involved in organizing activism at that time know Black Lives Matter as a slogan, as a chant, Black Lives Matter, because the police were just over and over and over again, like they've been doing for hundreds of years, just murdering Black people, and there's no accountability. And so at this particular moment, a young organizer, a young woman organized a demonstration outside of a police station in North Minneapolis. This is before George Floyd. This is before all of that. And it turned into an encampment. People just went and posted up and stayed there. I mean, the police precinct stopped operating like normal. And then one day they came in there and bulldozed everything, and they built a wall there because they were so terrified of the community just being there. The community, it was completely nonviolent, and it was beautiful. They had campfires, and people were camping, and people were bringing food, and people were singing and all this kind of stuff. And I'd gone over there, several times. This particular night, my kids hadn't seen it. And so I'm telling my wife, I want the kids to see it. I don't know how much longer it's going to be going on. On the way out of town, let's stop over there. And she said, okay, cool. For some reason, we got delayed and the sun went down, it got dark. And my wife said, I don't want to go over there after dark. I said, no, don't worry about it. It's okay, no problem. Don't worry about it, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of times people listening to this podcast have heard me say my wife's instincts are undefeated. But I was like, no, come on, babe. I just wanted to. She was like, no, it doesn't feel right to me. I said, okay. So we leave and go to Chicago. And that night, some white supremacist people went over to that encampment with guns and shot it up. Like they fired into the crowd. So it's like, okay, if you needed further confirmation, to just listen to your wife. So we get to Chicago, get up the next day and go to Juma, and it's announced that Imam Talib's wife had died. Now, anybody that knew Imam Talib knew that he loved his wife. I mean, he loved his wife like a schoolboy loves their first crush. His wife's name was Sana. He called her Sana. Sana. He loved his wife. And so I'm thinking, oh, man. And I said, I'm on my way to go visit Imam Talib right now. Like, we're driving to New York tonight. I just talked to him two days ago. I was supposed to go visit him. I'm thinking, well, like, now I probably won't be able to. So we get to New York. I send Imam Talib a text. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Brother Imam, just want to offer my condolences. I know how much your beloved wife means to you. You know, no expectations. I was going to try to see you, but, you know, I understand you might need your space. And if there's anything I can do, please let me know. I send the text. I hit send on the text. Immediately my phone rings. It's Imam Talib. Habibi, what you doing? Where you at? I said, man, I'm in the city. I'm in Manhattan. I'm staying at my in-laws' place. He said, you want to hang out? I said, yeah. I didn't know if you'd be able, you know, I don't know what kind of. Yeah, he said, I'm getting a haircut in the Boogie Down Bronx. Pull up. I'm getting in the Boogie Down Bronx. Pull up. I said, yes, sir. So he said, I'll send the address. You come through. I said, yes, sir. He sent the address. I went to the barber shop. But this was a day or maybe 2 days after he had just buried his wife. We hung out for hours. We probably hung out for 6 or 8 hours. No exaggerating. We ate. We talked. The barber shop was almost kind of like another office for him. There were times where he would remember something funny about her and he would laugh. He would remember something, so he'd be sad about, he would cry, you know. You talking about leadership. You talking about somebody being a teacher. You talking about mentorship. You talking about I am who I am because somebody loved me. It's like, man, that man allowed me to be in his proximity. And I saw in him the signs of sainthood where he loved his wife. He obviously was heartbroken. He said, Brother Ali, for years we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And we don't know if we mean it until we need it. We don't know if we mean it till we need it. It's like you say this stuff, you say it, you say it, you say it, and you hope that it's imprinted on you. And then you see somebody lose the person that they love most in this world. I knew he already lost his teacher. He loved Sheikh Tofi. Rahimahullah, Allah have mercy on him. But he lost his wife. And he said, Allah has the right to do whatever Allah does. And he said, when we wanted something to go one way and it goes a different way, it's because Allah gave us his choice instead of ours. Whether it's bitter or he say we take the bitter with the sweet. I mean, it was just, I will never forget that. And so many other moments with Imam Talib. He really always had his door open for activists, for organizers, for regular people. He lived his entire life serving our community, serving us, And it's like, man, after everything that man's been through, the fact that he treated me like a relative, he treated me like a son. And like, I don't know my family history. I don't know who my family was. I don't know what my family did. I don't know if my family was in America during slavery, during Jim Crow, I just really don't know. And Imam Talib, never treated me like anything other than a younger brother, a son. And there's times where he would say to me, he said, you get on that mic, Brother Ali. He said, you can do things that an imam can't do. He said, you can do things, the stuff you do on that microphone. And he's like, and he didn't give me advice on how to fix what I was doing. It wasn't like, here's how you need to get right. He just encouraged me. He just was like, what you're doing is good to the core. He said, anyone that doesn't understand that, it's not for them. They don't understand what hip hop is, and they don't know what it means. And so their opinion is not of import to us. You're a warrior poet. This is who we are. And at that time, I think I had stopped cursing on stage, but I used to curse a lot in my music, y'all know. And I used to curse on stage and everything else. He would say, what you're doing is important, and it made me not want to do anything on this mic that's not important. He said, what you're doing is beautiful. And it just made me want to be beautiful. And it's because he understood us. He understood the legacy. He understood the culture. He understood all the slang we were using, all of that stuff. It's like we didn't get to know Malcolm. These are Malcolm's students. These are Malcolm's children. And I consider myself Malcolm's child, whether that makes sense to other people or not. I'm sad that I got to go through the rest of my life, and I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to get that hug again. Yeah, I'm sad. I'm not going to see his name show up on my phone, and I pick it up, and he just says, "Habibi, you want what you want?" Like he talked to like we talk. "Habibi, what you want? You trying to hang out? Where you at? Pull up, come through." Yeah, this is a man in his 70s. You know what I mean? Come through. What's good, Habibi? You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get that again from him. not in this life. Inshallah, we'll be together in the next life. But at the same time, I feel extremely fortunate to know somebody that lived life for what life is supposed to be about, for faith, for service, for care, for justice. And they say that the greatest sign of a righteous person is that the second you see them, the second you hear them, the second you think about them, they remind you of God. And Imam Talib is that. So it's like, man, I feel so deeply, deeply grateful. And what Dr. West says is so true. I am who I am because somebody loved me. And this is one of the people that loved us. And it's just like, man, that's how you live a life. Yeah. So this is in memory of Harlem's Imam, the student of Sheikh Tofi, our Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid. We're praying Al-Fatiha for him. Allah bless you all. Inshallah, we'll be back with more frequent episodes again. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.